Hey, everybody. Welcome to the INSIDEWAG Nutrition Podcast. I'm Josh,
And I'm Chris.
and today we have a guest on the show. He is another WAG coach. He is the head of the WAG Twitter account. He is the head of the Mighty Networks one-on-one page, which we have recently moved over to, which is very exciting. It's a really cool platform. Maybe he can talk a little bit more about that. He is from Texas. He loves Olympic weightlifting. He lived in South Africa for a little bit. He lives in Kentucky, which I'm not sure which one is more foreign to me, South Africa or Kentucky. But either way, it's great to have him on the podcast. Please welcome Mitch Lockhart to the podcast. Thanks for
Welcome,
coming on,
Mitch.
man.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I like how you led in by plugging my new social media network. Like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Please,
Like
please
and
come over.
subscribe. Yeah.
We'd love to have you guys.
Yeah. Well, it's all new territory, and it's something that we're working on, and you've done an awesome job, within our crew, within the company, like ushering in this like new era. We're getting off of Facebook, which is exciting, I think, for a lot of people. And Mighty Networks is pretty cool. I was skeptical. I think a lot of people were at first, but I really am enjoying it.
Yeah, man. Look, anything that gets me further away from advertising and Zuckerberg is a win in my book. Yeah,
hmm
as a win in
Yeah.
my book. I like one of the main benefits for both us as a company and people who are kind of joining us there is like you get to see all of the content that we're pushing out, and I don't have to pay for you to see that content. So you're not having to kind of get lost in all the traffic and stuff of
Yeah.
of people advertising to you, which is really nice.
Yeah,
So
man.
it's been a great way to connect in a different and a fun way with kind of our client base as well as just kind of the people as a whole.
Sure, man.
Yeah, it seems like a much more direct platform,
Yeah.
like to the point, without all the
Yeah,
confusion and the distraction of Facebook.
it almost reminds me of like message boards back in the day, right? Like
Mm.
forums
Yeah.
where you have like that kind of direct interaction, which has been really, really cool.
Yeah. Um, I want to turn it over to Chris real quick because Chris, and Chris, go ahead and talk about Mitch a little bit because you
So,
guys,
yeah.
yeah, go for it. You go.
Okay. Yeah. So, if you've listened to my podcast interview, you might have mentioned, or you might remember that I mentioned, when I was asked the question, like, what was one of my greatest achievements or proudest accomplishments as a WAG coach? And thankfully, we're looking at him right now. It's Mitch. Like, just the
Oh
fact that,
man.
like, what I got to do to transform my life helped you transform yours, and you are now here sitting with us as a WAG coach and we're now part of this collective team who gets to help people all over the world. And as you and I have talked about in many of check-ins through the years, the tendrils continue to flow and have this impact on so many people's lives because of your and our interactions together over the years, working together. So it's awesome to have you here and be able to kind of talk about this journey that how you got here, and what all the motivation was behind that. So it's cool just to be here, man. We've come a long way. Who would have known, that this is where you'd
Who,
be
who would have known? Yeah,
after so long ago?
it's wild.
So with that, maybe we can kind of go into the kind of first question here is like, so obviously, Josh mentioned that you made a big move from South Africa back to the States, living in Kentucky here, and your life is vastly different, I would imagine, in many ways. So maybe bring us through, tell us that story. Like, how'd you end up back here in the United States, and how did you end up as a WAG coach in that process?
Yeah, man. That's a long story, but I'm going to give you the elevator speech.
Yep.
So I grew up in Houston, and I was there for about 18 years before moving up to Austin to go to the University of Texas, where I studied public relations, and then popped back down to Houston for a little bit. Decided corporate wasn't for me, and went on a grand adventure. Josh mentioned earlier that I was in South Africa for a little while. I was actually in South Africa for about 10 years. which is a long while. And it
Yeah, it
was it
is.
was it was absolutely incredible experience. Like, if you ever have the chance to completely kind of plug yourself into a different culture and a different place and a different way of life, it was one of the most eye-opening experiences I think I'll probably ever go through. And I had an amazing time there, and I learned a ton. And I decided that it was time to come back and be a bit closer to family, reconnect with old friends, and that's how I ended up back in Murray. Both sides of my family have been in this part of southwestern Kentucky for about 150 years. So I've got really deep roots here. All my family's here, and plus it snows. It snows here, which I'm kind of all about. Uh, yeah. So getting back to how I kind of got involved with WAG and you, when I was in SA, I joined CrossFit. And as any CrossFitter does, I went just absolutely balls to the wall for like the first 6 months and got like soaked into the culture and like really drank the Kool-Aid. And when you're in that space, you start kind of wanting to min max, right? Like you're getting your Excel spreadsheets out and you're like, why isn't my snatch going up? It's because you're eating like garbage, dude. And so I remember, and this is hazy because I don't know if you guys experienced this, but like with the pandemic, especially with lockdown in South Africa, like we couldn't leave the house for 3 months, and then past that we had general lockdown for almost a year. So
Man.
I don't even know what year it is sometimes when I'm trying to think back. So I'm trying to remember pre-pandemic and how I got
Yeah.
involved there. But I think it was a YouTube video or something like that, watching Katrin or Cole or somebody like that, and they're like, "Hey, working against gravity." And I thought maybe that was the missing piece of the puzzle. So I signed up and met this fine gentleman sitting across from me. Which, by the way, man, that was a beautiful introduction, and that's like it's way too early in the day for those kind of feels. Like kind of choking up here, but that was very nice. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
And then I got at the time I was working in the craft beer industry in marketing and sales, headed up their social media, some of the digital side in Cape Town, and wasn't loving my job, wasn't hating it necessarily. Like it was fine, it was corporate. I had a lot of fun, but I also hit a point where I realized especially as I got further into my WAG journey, that I'm kind of perpetuating some not so great habits and things in other people. And I wanted to do something that kind of gave me more fulfillment in my life, because I get a lot of my maybe self-worth is probably a bit of an overstatement, but I get a lot of my daily satisfaction from the job that I do. And I wanted that to be moving the needle for people in a positive direction. And that's when I kind of started poking around on Chris's coaching page. It's like, all right, what's this guy do? Like, how did he get into this? And I saw the precision nutrition certification. I was like, well, I don't know. Like maybe I could get into that. Like if nothing else, I'll have a better understanding of nutrition. It'll help me be a better client. And I did that and I absolutely loved it. I was like, well, maybe I need to make a radical change in my life. So after that, we chased up a bit of the coach cert. The WAG coach cert launched probably about 8 months after that or so. And I jumped in on the first time, and I basically just kept spamming the powers that be at working against gravity until I got some attention, and worked as a sub coach for about a year and a half. Worked through the pandemic as a sub coach, which was a godsend because everything in South Africa shut down. I didn't have a job at the time, so that helped float me through an entire period where I literally wouldn't have had a job if it wasn't for WAG. And then we shifted into full time a few years ago. Like I said, it's all a bit of a blur now, but I've been at it for a while, man. At my peak, about 140 clients, and I'm shifting into a bit of the marketing side, kind of going back to my roots there, which has been a nice change, to do something a bit different and help the company grow. So
Awesome.
that's kind of my start to finish in a nutshell.
So
That's awesome.
let me ask,
So
let me
cool.
ask a quick question. When you were talking about habits that you were kind of perpetuating, are you speaking kind of like directly to the industry that you were in? Like,
Yeah, specifically, yes,
yeah, okay.
absolutely. I mean, and it's South Africa in general, and I don't like to generalize, but like the drinking culture there is quite big. Um, And a lot of that's to the detriment of the people who live there and the country as a whole. And I got to the point where I just didn't really want to be a part of that anymore.
Yeah. Well, good for you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a big leap to change
Yeah.
and get yourself out of that situation willingly, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, it was scary, but here we are. It all works out. Like I'm a firm believer in the actions that we take eventually drive us to where we need to be, whether they're easy or tough. So
Yeah.
so we made it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you live in you live in Kentucky now. Who lives with you? Who do you live with? You got pets? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, we
I
see
live
those
with
cages back there. Are those for
we
animals or
they are no. Chris, I'm actually into some really weird stuff, but we can't talk about that on the
Yeah,
podcast.
is that your special
That's
room,
another
man?
Yeah, it's my very special room. I don't do tours though, unfortunately. It's just for me. No, I live with my partner here in our little 3-bedroom cottage, and I've got 2 border collies which came with me from South Africa.
Oh, wow.
And that's a whole nother story, which is
I
like 2 out of 10 would never recommend transporting pets internationally during a pandemic. Like that was easily the most stressful week of my life, but we got him here. And then I have a little Australian Shepherd who we got about a year ago, and she's an absolute ham. Like border collies and Aussies are very very similar, like high drive, high fun, but the Aussie's a bit less neurotic. So like if you're looking for a working dog and you want like the fun side instead of the I always need a job side, Aussies are where it's at. We also have 2 cats. We have 2 cats. So
Oh, wow.
that's if for those that are counting the audience, that's five animals in my 3-bedroom house. The last cat, interestingly enough, we were like out on the front having a barbecue. I was smoking a pork shoulder. We were sitting out on the lights, and all of a sudden I just like hear this like rustling in the bushes and little itty bitty mews coming out. I was like, what's that sound? And every single woman that was at our little get together immediately like flocks over to the bush, and I heard lots of cooing and oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? And so there's this tiny little black cat. I mean, just small. Obviously hadn't been fed in a while, didn't look too happy. And it was immediately, well, can we keep it? And the answer was no, absolutely not. We have 1 cat and 3 dogs. Like I don't need another animal. But as that goes, always within about 6 hours, we were trying to lure it into the house to rescue it. So now we have a second cat. Her name is Salem. Appropriate. Awesome. Because
Nice.
This happened around Halloween. So
cool.
Yeah, but she's a little treasure.
She's fitting in nicely with the crew.
Yeah, as far as cats go, like I'm not a big cat guy.
Same.
But I'm coming around. Like she is quite sweet, and I think especially because she was like living in the forest, eating grasshoppers before, she seems quite grateful. So maybe that's tainting her view of us as humans.
Sure.
So no regrets.
Cool. I'm a big time cat guy.
Are you?
Yeah.
I thought I saw some little something walking around your screen in our call earlier.
Yeah. Yep. She was scratching her face on the microphone. So.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Just
yeah.
Mic check.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how has things been, Mitch, like transitioning into your role from what you used to do? Obviously, like I remember like working in that industry, going to an office, having a place to go, the pandemic. I remember like working with you just being fortunate to be able to get out for a walk near the ocean during lockdown.
Yeah.
Time when it was like, you couldn't even go outside for a walk kind of thing. You're very limited in what you could do, but tell us how you adapted to the transition of working for someone and then going to work for WAG and working from home, and then how you had to structure your day-to-day life to make that work for you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So before I started working for the brewery, I was mainly doing freelance and things like that. So I'm not a stranger necessarily to kind of being my own boss, setting my own schedule and things like that. And then when I got into corporate, the 40 hours a week, the commuting and all that other stuff, to get away from that, to get out of the office, to get out of the car, to make my own schedule and kind of decide when and how I worked was, man, it's such a breath of fresh air. That again was I mean, outside of getting out of the alcohol industry, that was another big driving factor for me was I do not live to work. When I'm working, like I'm 100% in it, but my day-to-day life, I'm not massively money motivated. I'm not career motivated. Um, as long as I've got enough to keep the lights on and live comfortably, that's kind of what I'm after. And so moving away from that corporate space, rat race space, where you're always kind of chasing the next promotion, chasing that money, getting back into, I just get out of bed, set my alarm, get my coffee, sit down, got my dogs in my lap, music's going. Like I'm in control of every aspect of my life, both personal and professional, for the most part, which has been fantastic. An important part of that, though, was setting a hard schedule for myself. That every morning I get up the exact same time, 7 o'clock, let the dogs out, coffee for an hour, have a chat, wake up, kind of get into my work mode mindset. And then from 8 o'clock forward, I'm in my office. And even though I do game on my computer, this office to me is still a workspace. Outside of work hours, I don't spend much time here. And that's been really important too, is like having a separate, okay, this is where you go to do the thing. And when you're out of that space, you need to leave all of that behind. And that was another kind of driving reason to get out of the corporate space. Is like with WAG, I don't have to worry about my phone going off at 2 a.m. because, something at the brewery blew up, or there's an angry client, or now I need to go take a keg down to this, that, or the other at 8 in the evening because someone's run out of beer. So that's really allowed me to maximize work-life balance and has led to me being immensely happier than I was before.
That's great. I mean, the scheduling yourself is so important. Setting up something that is sustainable for you. I know there's certain people that are the total opposite, and they need the structure from somewhere else or from
Right.
someone else to do it. To be productive. And I think that's something that we've talked to quite a few coaches so far, and that's come up a few times where people, that was a major adjustment. It was, I mean, ultimately an adjustment in a good way, but like right off the bat, some people were like really stressed about it,
Right.
trying to figure out what works. I know it took me a while, for sure. I tried a bunch of different things, to how to make the most out of my workday. Chris too. We've talked about it before. But I
Yeah.
mean, he went through the same thing. So it's cool that you were like, oh yes. I mean, the freedom is very cool, but again, you have to like you got to give yourself those guidelines and directions, because that freedom, all of a sudden, it could be 9 o'clock at night, and you're like, oh, I didn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
No,
now this is
it
a
cuts both
problem.
ways. It
Yeah,
cuts both
Yeah.
ways for sure. Now you gotta be mindful, but I think for the most part, uh, if anyone given enough time can make it work. I think it just takes some adjusting.
Yeah.
I heard. Do you know who Beeple is? The
I do not
artist.
know.
Okay, this artist. He does all these outrageous digital art drawings, and his whole thing was he was going to do a digital art drawing every single day. And so he's been doing it for like 15 years. He's been doing
Oh my
this.
gosh.
And
Wow.
he was like talking NFTs and crypto and all that stuff. He sold his first 5,000 drawings as an NFT for like $69 million or something like that. But
Oh,
it's crazy.
that's so much money.
It's a crazy story. There's a
Yeah.
documentary. There's a documentary on YouTube, and it's so funny because he has no idea what's happening. Like he's walking around his house, and his kids are there, and he's like looking at his phone. He's like, "Oh my god, dude! Oh my god, what?" He's just
What?
like he's
Yeah.
watching it in real time. It's a cool documentary. But anyways, my
Mhm.
point. He had a great saying. He said, people don't lack creativity. They lack deadlines.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I was like, that's brilliant, because we all are can tap into this creative zone, or whatever we consider like our work to be, or something that we're really passionate about, we can all tap into that. But far too often there's no deadline, there's no guideline for like the finished product, and so when you set yourself up, for your work day, it's like you were just talking about, you do work in that space, and when you leave, the work, that mindset kind of stays behind. You give
Right.
yourself that separation.
Right.
It's the same thing with like those deadlines. I think that's a really important thing to consider and keep in mind.
Yeah, it's like that key to success when working from home is the enrollment of disciplines, so that creates such a sense of freedom in your life, because it's the discipline of being honed into your work, the discipline of having a hard out, and then a transition back to Mitch time, like this is my time now. I've left that behind. And that's not easy for a lot of people to do. And I remember coming in and seeing like the luxurious lifestyle that it seemed like that WAG coaches lived. And not to say that's not the case, but at the time we had a couple of coaches living in Mexico, I believe. And, they're doing check-ins on the beach. And that was like the catalyst for me going like, what the fuck? Like, I want to do that, I want to be working from the beach and like posting tight stuff like that. So, and for me, the mentality I came into this job was like, oh, I put the fun first, like the freedom came first, and then the discipline was like an afterthought. And then that ruined me for a couple of years. Like it was a hard time getting myself back into a disciplined structure, because I was chasing the freedom aspect of the job first, and then the job kind of came second, and that wasn't working very well for me at all. Like you said, Josh, like nobody wants to be doing check-ins at 3 a.m. or responding to this or that or whatever, coming out from a hike in Rocky Mountain National Park with a check-in that's going to be overdue in 15 minutes. Like that wasn't a good world for me to live in. Right. And I had to get my stuff together. So it took a little bit of time, but in setting out these routines, these rituals that you abide by, for the most part, not every day is going to be like that, but there's some adjustment and wiggle room there. But for the most part, because you have this disciplined practice every day, it's so freeing because it's so predictable. And a lot of people kind of scoff at like, oh, I don't want my everyday to be the same. But you're like, well, what's the alternative? You're going to wake up, hit the alarm and scream into your day, and then basically just be chasing after a sense of calm and peace the entire day, when really you have the opportunity to start your day with peace and calm. That's why I love that you say you start your day with like a morning of coffee and a chat, and you just kind of ease into the day instead of screaming right into it. Right.
No, yeah. Like, yeah, even, and I love my sleep, and I normally get at least 8 hours, but like, I wouldn't sacrifice that hour. Even if I end up going to bed a bit late, I know I'm going to be a bit tired the next day, I still wake up at 7, because I need that hour of me time to wake up and to get my mind straight, get a little caffeine in, play with the dogs, and then I'm set. It sets a tone for the entire day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, you do you first before you
absolutely,
especially having to have the mental capacity to do what we do. We help other people, and we are problem solvers. We help people figure out and sort out the problems that are going on in their world, which, as we've talked about numerous times on this podcast, has a lot more to do than just nutrition. A lot of our check-ins end up ultimately having sometimes very little to do with nutrition, and everything to do about what's going on in this individual's life and how that all impacts their nutrition. So there's a lot of digging deep, reading through the lines, and you can't do that if you're just going into the day in a chaotic fashion. So kudos to you for sorting that out and starting your day with peace and calm. It's the way to do it.
Yeah, man. Thanks. It's the way forward.
Yeah. Along those same lines, what would you say are some of the biggest accomplishments that you have kind of had as a nutrition coach?
That's a great question, man. I'd say like top line, if I think like what's been really rad in the last year. I don't know if you know who Bo Brown is. He's a Olympic weightlifter on the national and international scene. He used to lift at 96 kgs. He came to WAG just over a year ago looking to drop a weight class from 96 to 89. And he was my first, I'd coached plenty of Olympic weightlifters, but not at that level. I mean, this guy is just, he's an animal. And I felt quite a bit of pressure there, but it was also a great opportunity for me to kind of push outside my comfort zone and grow in that area. And so helping him drop a weight class in a pretty tight window, and then go on to take the 2021 national championship, and then to place third in Pan Am's was
Wow.
definitely a highlight for me. Definitely a highlight for me. And I work with a lot of high level athletes that really push themselves, and it's always satisfying when they come back and say like, oh, like the fueling for Saturday was perfect, and like I crushed it. I knocked 15 minutes off of my marathon time, or I placed third in high rocks, or I qualified for this next triathlon or whatever. That's always a big highlight. But on the opposite side of that, over the last year, I've also had a lot of just what I would consider just very normal, everyday, not even weekend warriors, just like the people who are just trying to improve their health and nutrition and be comfortable and confident in their own skin, like watching their journey from start to finish and watching them have these epiphanies where they're like, man, I would not have handled that situation the same 6 months ago. Like I would not have been able to take that comment that my mom made about, what I'm eating or not eating at Thanksgiving, and just taking it in stride and being able to grow past it. And it's been pretty awesome, man. It's been pretty awesome. So like I said, when I say a lot of my satisfaction in life comes from my work, that's exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about. When I can log off and feel like, man, I really made a positive difference for people that are important to me, because my clients are important to me. That's what it's all about.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Totally.
So I use a lot of you've got a lot of good analogies in your coaching, Mitch, which I've seen just from obviously in the realm, and me being a team lead, so I quality check people's check-ins and give feedback and things like that. So I've gotten to get in there and see that. So you're a man of many analogies, and so leading into my next question, I'm curious, like what's one piece of advice that you love to give your clients, or like what's one of your like most badass analogies that you love to give people that helps things click? Like what do you feel can sometimes be a piece of advice that you can give a client that is the turning point for their journey?
That's I don't have a badass analogy off the top of my head, Chris, because
Well,
you're really putting
over.
you're really putting the spotlight on me now. But
Yeah.
I will say this: people are incredibly hard on themselves in life, in work, in school, their nutrition, their workouts, and they're very quick to focus on what's not going right. Right. So if I asked you, if I asked the average person, like, tell me about your day, what are they going to lead off with? Almost always the negative,
I
right?
was gonna say the
Almost,
problems.
almost everything. Well, I was late for work because this guy cut me off, and I spilled coffee on myself, and I didn't get a break until 2 o'clock. I completely missed lunch, and my boss is breathing down my neck. And then I get home, and the house is a wreck, and the kids are screaming. Blah, 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 blah. So say there's 6 things that went wrong in your day. Those 6 things are the things that you focus on. Do you know how many hundreds, if not thousands of things went right in your day in order to get you from point A to point B? But we completely ignore those, right? Because there's an expectation that that's how it should be. And I think a lot of people miss opportunities to celebrate small wins as they get them. And to be cognizant of the fact that everyone is going through something. And that's something that I've also learned being a nutrition coach and getting to connect with people the way that we do, is you see how people act towards you, and how they carry themselves in their day-to-day lives, and things look like they're going pretty well for most people, but everyone's going through something. And if you're going through something, it is absolutely, it's okay to make mistakes and mess up. And it's important that you're able to forgive yourself for those things and move on, and be grateful for the things that are going right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's like focusing on the negative. It's an interesting thing when we open up a check-in, and I'm sure this has happened to you all, where like a client will just start to basically like, well, here's everything that I didn't get to do this week, or I didn't get to, or the bad. And you're like, that's all well and fine, but like I'm far more curious about what did happen. Right. Like that's what's putting the movement and the momentum in the right direction. Like, granted, you might have had these things working against you or not in your favor, but surely there were some things that did. But that's the things I want to hear about, because those are the little tidbits that shine through that tell me what you were able to do despite all these things perceivably going wrong.
Right.
And therein lies the celebration of the wins. It's like, well, you're telling me XYZ happened, but you're still telling me ABC happened. Sounds
Yeah.
pretty great to me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I think it helps pointing that out to clients helps them really focus on the things that actually matter more.
Right.
So
Right.
I can
And
gain more
there
leverage.
and there always is a silver lining. Like, I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday, and that saying, like, the obstacle is the way, right?
Yep.
Like the thing that's going to make you grow and that's going to push you in the right direction is very rarely the easy thing. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how life works. So embracing the suck a bit and pushing past it and using it to grow is paramount.
Yeah. It's not the survival of the fittest. It's those most adaptable to change that generally succeed. So it is like change is the way, obstacle is the way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that.
With with all that, with that said, what like in the nutrition realm, what's a piece of advice that, like, if someone's just starting out, what's generally a piece of advice that you could give to someone that's going to have an impact on their day?
Um, that's a good question. I think the number one thing when you're getting started is to eliminate reactionary food choices.
Mm.
The more you plan out your day ahead of time, the easier life is going to get. So, like, Josh, if I told you, like, all right, I'm gonna take a road trip, or Chris, I'm gonna take a road, because I know exactly where you live. I'm gonna take a road trip and visit Chris. And Chris is like, well, I live in Colorado, and I just get in my car and start driving to Colorado from Kentucky with no GPS, no nothing. I just get in my car, gas up, and I'm just like, I know it's west, so we're gonna cruise that direction. Like, how long is it gonna take me to get there? It's gonna be horrific, right? But like, if I know exactly where I'm going, I plug it in. I got my little gas stops along the way, rest stops, maybe do a little sightseeing. Like, it's gonna be a good time. But your nutrition's the same way, man. Like, if you wake up in the morning, it's like, well, hope it goes good. Like, you're not gonna have a good time.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have a good time. So pre-planning, and at least the night before, and even better if you can do a bit of meal prep. And this is kind of depends on your tolerance for sameness. Like, we eat the same thing 3 nights in a row. We'll do a big meal prep, and it's like we're having taco bowls 3 nights in a row, and that's just what it's going to be. I plug in those 3 days, and then if my breakfast is generally pretty much the same, then I don't really have to worry about snacks and sorting out lunch. So it makes it a heck of a lot easier, especially when you're kind of trying to familiarize yourself with the process of tracking, with the process of learning how to weigh and measure everything and enter it into the app, and you can't be doing all that while you're trying to figure out what you're going to eat. It's just you're really stacking the cards against yourself.
You can't be doing that while you're trying to drive.
You can't. You
Yeah.
can't. Especially if you're driving to Colorado without
Right.
any idea. You're just heading west,
Yeah.
and now you're trying to plug things in.
And I'm so glad that that's the analogy I was looking for. Like, when I brought up the last question, you had the master of analogies, your roadmap analogy, it's your nutrition without GPS is one of the analogies that I love to repeat to my clients, because it's like, do you want to just wing it and deal with the chaos that comes with that, or the empowerment or the challenge of learning that comes with it? Sure. It's not to say that doesn't come with it. Or would you rather have at least a vague idea of how you're going to get from point A to point B, and maybe make it more of a straighter line than this, wavy, wandering, don't know where the heck I'm going kind of line, So thank you for, pulling that out, because that's kind of what I was
Cool,
secretly
man.
hoping
Well,
for, and you nailed it, dude.
I'm glad I'm glad I delivered. No,
Yeah.
that's excellent news.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Josh. See?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
let's see. Oh, go
well,
ahead, Chris. Sorry. My
yeah.
bad.
So something I wanted to know. So, I mean, we know a lot about you. I mean, I know I personally know a lot about you just working so closely with you, Mitch. And then obviously, you know, we keep in communication fairly well outside of work parameters and stuff. But what's something that most people wouldn't or don't know about you?
That's a good question. I have to be honest, you guys did give me a little bit of a sneak peek at some of these questions, so I wouldn't be totally completely off guard. And this one, I sat with this for about 45 minutes, to the point where I even asked people that know a lot about me, "Hey, what's something you don't think you would know about me?"
Yeah.
And I got lots of blank stares. But where I landed was that I'm what I consider, and I might coin this term, a serial hobbyist. A serial hobbyist. So what I've noticed about myself is that I get bored quite easily, and I like chasing new things. And when I find something I enjoy, man, but do I just full face into it nonstop for like 6 months. A good example
He
would
cranks
be,
that knob to 11.
dude.
Yeah.
It's like I'm breaking the knobs at
Yeah.
some points, like YouTube videos, forums, like I'm talking to experts. Like, I want to be the best at whatever I'm getting into, which it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. Sometimes I think I jump a little bit too far down the rabbit hole, and I kind of lose sight of why I started and what I was hoping to get out of it in the first place, which is enjoyment. I have a bad habit of trying to monetize my hobbies as well, but we won't jump into that rabbit hole. But yeah, but like a good example of that would be, there was a kick for about 6 months where I was building terrariums, and I'm
Just
not
gonna
talking
ask you about that.
I'm not talking about I'm not talking about like little glass ball terrariums. I'm talking about like 60 gallon full ecosystem,
Wow.
like self-contained, bioactive, and
Yeah.
and you know, that was a big thing for a while. Unfortunately, I had to leave them when I came from South Africa, but I want to get back into that. My latest kick is gardening and like sorting out the backyard. We've been in this house for a little over a year, and I have in my mind a very specific way that I would like it to look, and it doesn't look like that right now. And by God, it's just gonna take some time.
Yeah, I remember you sending me those photos of those terrariums, and they were just starting to consume the space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, they were taking up way too much space, man. But
they were
it's
so
actually
cool, though, man.
it's so nice to have something alive in quite a sterile environment, like an office where it's like everything's electronic, and like you just kind of like put your head over and put your head up above the screen, like you can smell leaves, and it smells like forest floor, and there's things moving. It's nice. It's nice. It's like an aquarium, but infinitely better.
It's like an aquarium, but better. Oh,
Yes,
that's awesome.
without all the water.
Yeah.
What an interesting thing. How did you get into that?
YouTube.
Okay.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I was like served an ad on Instagram or something. I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. And then there's this one guy, if you want to look him up, he's on YouTube. It's called Serpa Designs. And what he would do is he'd just make these super chill videos where he's literally just sitting there for 30 minutes, like building terrariums or like doing some pruning, where he's like moving plants around and like arranging things. And it's so zen, man. And I would just sit there and watch, be like, I can do that. Why not me?
Yeah.
And then here we are 6 months later, building 60-gallon terrariums. So no half measures.
That's fascinating, man. Fascinating.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you do get back into it, then yeah, we're definitely gonna need to see some pics. Those will take the place of those dog cages in the back.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
big
No,
60-gallon terrarium.
those are horrendous. No, the thing about the crates, you joke, is that what's nice about having a border collie is they're hyper intelligent, right? But with that, you also have like the reasoning of like an 8-year-old, so they can get up to terrible things while you're not home. And that's a nice safe space where if I have 2 hours where I need to leave the house, I'm not going to come home to someone disassembling my refrigerator.
For sure.
Yeah.
I know that some
Yeah.
dogs, it's a comfort thing too. Like
Mhm.
they feel
Oh no,
safe in there
yeah,
too.
no,
For
they go,
sure.
they go hard chill in there. Like we leave the doors open during the day, and they'll just go zonk out for a couple hours. It's a great way if we have guests over too. It's a great way for them if they're feeling overwhelmed. They can be like, well, I can always go to my crate, and I'm just gonna be left alone.
Yeah.
Yep. Little safe space for them. It's
Yeah,
also
yeah,
a
yeah.
good thing when you first get a dog too, for the training and discipline aspect of it, of that routine formation with them. Like this is when you go outside, this is where you eat. I'm gonna go disappear for my job for 7 to 8 hours, and I'll see you later.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so yeah, I had to do the same thing with my dogs, and over time, and it was actually starting to work from home, where I'm like, oh, I can start to kind of strip this function away a little more and build a little more trust with these guys. But yeah, border collies, I don't know that I'd be able to handle that. That's a big commitment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, little monsters. No, they're
yep,
great though. They're
yeah,
great
they
though. My
are.
little trash pandas.
So I guess we're getting ready to sign off here, but let people know if they want to know more about you. Let them know where they can get a hold of you. Where can they find you online?
That's a great question. One of the unfortunate side effects of working in the social media space for 6 to 8 years and having that be your all-consuming life is a burning desire to completely disconnect from all things social media.
Hmm.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not really alive in the social media space.
Got it.
But you can get a hold of me through Working Against Gravity.
There you
I'm
go.
always happy to connect if you're interested in working with me as a coach. I think you can still request even if you haven't been a client with me before. So
Yep.
I'm always looking to connect with rad people. So
Yeah.
And for existing clients, anybody who just wants to reach out and talk to Mitch or just get to know Mitch better, you can reach him in the Mighty Networks, group that we have now.
There you
So
go.
yes, absolutely.
all
Yeah, yeah.
coaches are available to you there. Just, and I'm sure you're going to do a lot more things in that network to help people get to know the coaches. This podcast is one of those, forefront to helping our clients and future clients know more about the team behind the brand, and put some, faces to the names. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. So we're definitely looking forward to more engagement there.
I was just thinking too, it's like I'm thinking when we do release these, as my clients listen to this is probably going to be the first time it's definitely going to be the first time that any of them hear me speak, actually,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is quite interesting. Quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a really, really cool thing what we're doing with the podcast, introducing everybody and just kind of giving a voice to the nameless face behind the screen that you guys are all checking in with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
This is an interesting thing too. So for those, maybe this will be the final question. You can send us off on this, Mitch. But for those watching the video component of this on YouTube who get to see Mitch's glorious face and beard,
No,
maybe for all
it's
those guys out there, maybe tell us what your beard care routine is
beard care
to keep
routine.
it looking so healthy and just thick, dude. It's a very strong
Such
facial
shine.
hair.
Thank you very much. First off, I can only take so much credit for this beard. 90% of beard is genes, and I got them good Scottish genes.
Yeah.
I don't know how that happened, but like I was one of those kids that like at 15, if I shaved at 7 by like 1 o'clock, I had a 5 o'clock shadow.
Mhm.
So like have good genes is my first tip.
Right. Okay.
Second tip is don't go nuts with the shampoo. Like a lot of guys think like, oh, I'm like I gotta wash my beard with like heavy stripping shampoo like every day. Like,
Mhm.
don't do that, bro. You're gonna end up with a fuzzy, damaged, lackluster, non-shiny beard, and nobody wants that.
No.
Like, definitely hot water every day. Give it a good scrub. But every other day or every third day, and get shampoo that's built for beards, or even like a high quality hair shampoos is fine as well. Like don't be putting in like that 6-in-1. Like you can
Six in one.
hair shave. I can't even pull out the full six, but I'm sure there is a
Yeah.
6-in-1 somewhere there.
Right.
And then also like after you get the little bit of the shampoo going, a little bit of beard oil but like don't be a sucker. Like do not pay exorbitant amounts of money for beard oil. All you need is jojoba oil with a couple drops of whatever essential oil you want in there. I'm a cedar and sandalwood guy myself. If you, so it's like a little bit rustic,
Musky,
little bit of saddle leather in there occasionally if I'm feeling frisky. But yeah, but like don't pay $20 for something that costs you like $5 at the drugstore.
Yeah.
Oh, and a boar bristle brush is always good for keeping things tidy. That's your top tip.
There we go.
Take it to the bank.
Yeah. That's what's up, dude.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, man.
Thanks for having me. Oh, what a blast.